You are not stuck. You are just operating on the same patterns, the same thoughts, the same habits that have been running your life on repeat. It feels like life is holding you back, but in reality, it's familiarity that's keeping you in place. The same reactions, the same comfort zones, the same excuses, dressed in different forms. You wake up with intention, but fall back into routine. You think about change, but act in ways that protect the version of you that already exists. And that's the truth most people avoid. Growth doesn't feel natural at first, because it requires you to let go of what feels safe. The life you want is not far away. It's just on the other side of a version of you that you've become too comfortable being. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And that includes your identity. You cannot expect a different life while thinking the same way, making the same choices, and holding on to the same mindset. Every result you have right now is a reflection of who you currently are, not who you want to be. And that's where the real shift begins, not in what you want, but in who you decide to become. Because until you break your own patterns, you will keep recreating the same outcomes, just in different situations. The old version of you will always choose what is familiar over what is necessary, and that is why change feels so difficult. Not because it's impossible, but because it demands a version of you that you haven't fully stepped into yet. There comes a point where you stop asking, "What more do I need?" and start asking, "What do I need to remove?" Because real growth is not about stacking more habits, more goals, more ideas on top of who you already are. It's about clearing what's in the way, the distractions you've normalized, the mindset that keeps you playing small, the excuses that sound reasonable but keep you stuck. Stoicism forces you to face this without comfort. You cannot build strength while protecting weakness. You cannot step forward while holding on to everything behind you. And most people delay this moment because letting go feels like loss, even when what you're losing is exactly what's holding you back. This is where transformation actually begins. Not in adding, but in cutting. Cutting the habits that waste your time. Cutting the thoughts that limit your actions. Cutting the identity that no longer matches where you're trying to go. And this is not about becoming someone fake or different. It's about removing everything that is not aligned with your true potential. The version of you that you're meant to become is already there, buried under layers of comfort, fear, and repetition. But uncovering that version requires something most people avoid. It requires you to let the old you go completely. Not slowly, not halfway, but fully. And that's why this kind of change is rare. Because it doesn't just ask you to improve. It asks you to rebuild from the ground up. There comes a point where you stop asking, "What more do I need?" and start asking, "What do I need to remove?" Because real growth is not about stacking more habits, more goals, more ideas on top of who you already are. It's about clearing what's in the way. The distractions you've normalized, the mindset that keeps you playing small, the excuses that sound reasonable but keep you stuck. Stoicism forces you to face this without comfort. You cannot build strength while protecting weakness. You cannot step forward while holding on to everything behind you. And most people delay this moment because letting go feels like loss, even when what you're losing is exactly what's holding you back. This is where transformation actually begins. Not in adding, but in cutting. Cutting the habits that waste your time. Cutting the thoughts that limit your actions. Cutting the identity that no longer matches where you're trying to go. And this is not about becoming someone fake or different. It's about removing everything that is not aligned with your true potential. The version of you that you're meant to become is already there, buried under layers of comfort, fear, and repetition. But uncovering that version requires something most people avoid. It requires you to let the old you go completely. Not slowly, not halfway, but fully. And that's why this kind of change is rare, because it doesn't just ask you to improve, it asks you to rebuild from the ground up. Accepting that your current self is not enough is not about tearing yourself down. It's about seeing clearly for the first time. Most people avoid this level of honesty because it's uncomfortable. It's easier to protect your ego, to justify your habits, to blame circumstances. But growth doesn't begin in comfort. It begins in truth. When you sit with yourself and admit where you're lacking, your discipline, your focus, your consistency, you are not attacking your worth. You are confronting your reality. And that difference changes everything. Because pretending keeps you safe, but it also keeps you stuck. Stoicism teaches you to remove illusions, to stop lying to yourself in small, convenient ways. If your habits are weak, say it. If you waste time, own it. If you avoid what you know you should be doing, face it directly. This is not self-hate. It's the highest form of self-respect. Because you are choosing truth over comfort. And only truth gives you something real to work with. When you stop denying your weaknesses, you take control of them. You stop being a victim of your patterns and start becoming the one who reshapes them. That's where freedom begins. Not in feeling good about where you are, but in being honest enough to change it. Your past is not your identity. It's a record. But the moment you keep replaying it, justifying it, or emotionally attaching yourself to it, it starts shaping how you see yourself today. You begin to think, this is just who I am, based on decisions made with a completely different mindset. And that's where the trap is. The old version of you was created by old habits, old beliefs, and old reactions. If you keep thinking the same way, you will keep recreating that same version, no matter how much you say you want to change. Stoicism teaches detachment, not from reality, but from the unnecessary weight you carry with it. Your mistakes were moments, not definitions. Your failures were experiences, not permanent labels. But holding on to them emotionally keeps you locked in a cycle where you relive what should have already been learned from. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means extracting the lesson and releasing the identity attached to it. It means saying, that happened, I learned from it, and I am no longer that person. The real shift happens when you stop using your past as an explanation for your present. Because every time you say, I'm like this because of what happened, you give your past control over your future. But the truth is, who you are right now is being shaped by what you choose to think and do today. When you detach from old identities, you create space for a new one. One built on awareness, discipline, and intention, not on history. And that's when change becomes real. Not when you rewrite your past, but when you stop letting it define your future. Every form of weakness in your life has a source, and most of the time, it's something you keep allowing. It could be habits that drain your focus, people who lower your standards, or distractions that quietly consume your time. The problem is not just their existence, it's your tolerance of them. You already know what's pulling you down. You feel it after wasting hours, after certain conversations, after repeating the same patterns. But awareness without action changes nothing. Strength begins the moment you stop negotiating with what weakens you. This is where real discipline shows up. Not in motivation, not in temporary effort, but in removal. Cutting off what drains you is uncomfortable because it forces you to let go of familiarity. It might mean distancing yourself from people, breaking habits that feel normal, or facing boredom without distractions. But understand this clearly. You cannot build a stronger version of yourself while holding on to things that keep you weak. It's a contradiction. Growth and comfort rarely exist together, and choosing growth means making decisions that feel difficult in the moment, but necessary in the long run. Stoicism teaches control over what you allow into your life. You don't control everything, but you do control your environment, your choices, and your standards. When you raise those standards, your life begins to change. You protect your energy like it matters, because it does. You become more focused, more disciplined, more clear. And slowly, the version of you that once felt stuck starts to disappear. Because you stopped feeding it and started building something stronger in its place. Discipline is not something you wait to feel. It's something you decide to live by. Most people rely on motivation, but motivation is unstable. It depends on mood, energy, and circumstances. Some days it's there, most days it's not. And if your actions depend on how you feel, your progress will always be inconsistent. That's why discipline is different. It removes emotion from the equation. It turns action into a standard, not a choice. You don't wake up early because you feel like it. You wake up because you said you would. You don't work only when you're inspired. You work because it's required. And that shift, from feeling to commitment, is where real change begins. Stoicism is built on this principle of consistent action. Doing what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Because feelings are temporary, but your habits shape your future. Every time you act despite resistance, you strengthen your control over yourself. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you move one step closer to the person you want to become. It's not about big, dramatic changes. It's about small, repeated actions done daily without excuse. That's what builds momentum. That's what builds identity. And over time, discipline stops feeling like effort. It becomes who you are. You no longer debate with yourself. You don't rely on external pushes. You simply act, even when it's boring, even when it's hard, even when no one is watching. Because you understand something most people ignore. Your life is a result of what you do consistently, not occasionally. Discipline is the bridge, but it's also the path. And if you commit to it fully, it doesn't just change your results. It changes you. Your mind is not neutral. It's always shaping your reality, either in your favor or against you. If you don't take control of it, it will default to patterns that keep you safe, not strong. That's where overthinking, doubt, and negative loops come from. They are not random. They are trained responses built over time. And if left unchecked, they slowly start controlling your actions. You hesitate when you should act. You doubt when you should decide. You imagine worst-case scenarios and treat them like truth. This is why so many people feel stuck, not because of their situation, but because of the way they think about it. Stoicism teaches a powerful shift. Your thoughts are not facts, they are suggestions. Just because something appears in your mind does not mean it deserves your belief. When a negative thought shows up, instead of accepting it, question it. Is this true? Is this useful? Is this helping me move forward? Most of the time, the answer is no. And in that moment, you have a choice to follow that thought or to replace it. This is where mental discipline comes in. You consciously redirect your focus. You choose clarity over confusion, action over fear, strength over weakness. Training your mind is a daily process. It's not about never having negative thoughts. It's about not being controlled by them. The more you practice this, the more stable you become. Your emotions stop swinging with every situation. Your decisions become sharper. Your confidence becomes grounded in logic, not mood. Because in the end, your life is shaped by the quality of your thinking. And when you take control of your mind, you take control of everything that follows. Comfort feels safe, but it quietly keeps you the same. Every time you choose ease over effort, you reinforce the version of yourself that avoids growth. You tell your mind, "This is enough," even when you know it isn't. And that's how people stay stuck. Not because they lack potential, but because they keep choosing what feels good in the moment over what builds them in the long run. Discomfort, on the other hand, is a signal. It shows you where growth is required. It appears when you step outside your Pravichnyi patterns, when you challenge your limits, when you do what you've been avoiding. And that's exactly why most people run from it. Stoicism teaches you to lean into that discomfort instead of escaping it, to face the resistance, not avoid it. Because every time you move toward what feels difficult, you expand your capacity. You become stronger, more disciplined, more in control. The things that once felt hard start to feel normal. And the things that once controlled you, fear, laziness, hesitation, begin to lose their power. Growth is not found in comfort zones. It's built in moments where you push through resistance and choose action anyway. This is the shift that changes everything. You stop asking, "How can I feel comfortable?" and start asking, "What will make me stronger?" And that question leads you to a different life, a life where you don't avoid difficulty, you use it. Where discomfort is not something you fear, but something you understand. Because you know that every time you step into it, you are leaving the old version of yourself behind and moving closer to the person you are meant to become. You cannot rebuild yourself without a clear direction. If your vision is unclear, your actions will stay scattered, and scattered effort always leads to scattered results. That's why the first real step in transformation is not action. It is clarity. You need to define exactly who you want to become, not in vague ideas, but in specific traits and behaviors. A disciplined person, a focused person, a calm person under pressure, a confident person who doesn't depend on validation. When your identity becomes clear in your mind, your decisions start to take shape around it. Then comes the difficult part, honesty. You have to look at your current self without excuses and ask a direct question. Does the way I live today match the person I say I want to become? If the answer is no, then nothing changes unless your actions change. Not your intentions, not your motivation, your actions. Because identity is built through repetition, not imagination. Every small decision either moves you closer to that vision or keeps you exactly where you are. Stoicism teaches alignment, not just thinking differently, but acting differently, even when it feels uncomfortable. You don't wait to become ready. You act as the version of yourself you want to become, even when it's hard, even when it feels unnatural at first. Over time, those actions shape your habits shape your character, and your character shapes your life. That's how transformation happens, not in one big moment, but in daily choices that slowly bring your vision into reality. You will feel anger. You will feel frustration. You will feel doubt, insecurity, and pressure. These emotions are not the problem. They are part of being human. The real difference is not whether you feel them, but whether they control you. Most people mistake emotions for instructions. They feel something strongly and immediately act on it, later regretting what they said or did. Stoicism teaches you to create distance between feeling and action, to pause, observe, and then respond with intention instead of impulse. Mastering your emotions does not mean suppressing them. or pretending they don't exist. It means acknowledging them without becoming them. You can feel anger without becoming aggressive. You can feel doubt without stopping your progress. You can feel frustration without losing control. Emotions rise naturally, but they do not have to decide your behavior. That space, the pause between emotion and reaction, is where real strength exists. A strong person is not someone who feels less. A strong person is someone who understands themselves well enough to choose their response. Instead of being driven by every emotional wave, they stay grounded in awareness. They ask, is this reaction aligned with who I want to be? And if it isn't, they don't act on it. Over time, this builds emotional stability. You stop reacting impulsively, you start responding wisely, and you regain control over your inner world. And when your inner world is controlled, nothing outside can easily shake you. Staying consistent when no one is watching is where real transformation happens. It's easy to show effort when there is attention, praise, or pressure from others. But true discipline is built in silence. When there is no audience, no recognition, and no immediate reward, only your character remains. And that is where the truth of your habits is revealed. Most people start strong when motivation is high, but they slowly fade when results are not visible. They expect progress to be fast, and when it isn't, they lose interest. But growth doesn't work on emotional timing. It works on repetition. The work you do when it feels meaningless is the same work that eventually creates meaningful results. Every small action you take in private is building something bigger than what you can see in the moment. Stoicism teaches that your value is not defined by external validation, but by internal consistency. You don't need applause to keep going. You don't need recognition to stay committed. You show up because that's who you are becoming, not because someone is watching. And over time, this quiet consistency compounds. The results may not appear immediately, but they are always building in the background. One day, the results will speak louder than any words ever could. But by then, you will already have become someone who doesn't depend on results to continue. That is the real reward, not just what you achieve, but who you become in the process. Becoming your own standard means shifting the entire focus of your life inward. Most people stay trapped in comparison, measuring their progress against others, their success against someone else's timeline, their worth against external validation. But that creates a constant cycle of pressure and dissatisfaction, because there will always be someone ahead in one area or another. Stoicism breaks that cycle by removing the need for comparison entirely. Instead of asking, "Am I better than them?" you start asking, "Am I better than who I was yesterday?" That becomes your only real measurement. Your growth is no longer dependent on how others are doing, but on whether you are evolving in your own discipline, mindset, and actions. This shift removes unnecessary competition and replaces it with self-awareness. You stop chasing approval and start building consistency. When you build your own standards, you define what is acceptable in your life, how you think, how you act, how you show up every day. And once those standards are set, you protect them. You don't lower them for comfort, for people, or for temporary emotions, because every time you compromise your standard, you also compromise your growth. Real self-mastery is not about outperforming others. It's about refusing to fall below your own expectations. Over time, this creates a strong inner identity. You no longer need external validation to feel progress, because you can see it in your discipline, your focus, and your consistency. And that is the real power of Stoic growth. You become someone who is guided not by comparison, but by principle. If you keep living the same way for the next year, will your life actually change? Rebirth does not begin when life gets easier. It begins when you decide to become stronger than your excuses. If you think I provided you valuable content, then please like this video, follow, subscribe, and comment your thoughts in the comment section.